A helpless prisoner, the room was cold, dark, and filled with the sound of chains. In the center of the prison cell sat a human head bowed, wrists bound, back bent. To the alien guards, he was nothing more than a weak animal. Humans, after all, were considered fragile in the galaxy. Thin skin, soft bones, no claws, no armor. A species made for farming, not fighting. The guards laughed every time they passed his cell. "Look at him," one sneered. "A little creature from a little world. His kind thought they could resist us." Another guard tapped the bars with his weapon. "Not anymore. Now he is just a toy." The human did not respond. He lifted his head slowly, his face half hidden in shadow. His eyes were calm, but there was something behind them, something the aliens could not see. To them, he was helpless. To him, this was only silence before the storm. The prison was a massive alien station, orbiting a dying star. Thousands of captives were held here, warriors, rebels, slaves taken from conquered worlds. All of them had heard the same thing. Humans were weak, humans were nothing. Humans were already extinct. But some of the older prisoners whispered different stories. They say humans once had ships. One alien whispered in the dark, voice trembling. Ships that could tear through fleets. Another shook his head. Lies. If it were true, this one would not be sitting here in chains. The human listened, but said nothing. His silence only made the others more curious. Why did he never cry? Why did he never beg? Even the strongest species broke under the guard's cruelty. But not him. He sat in the shadows waiting. The guards decided to test him. One evening, they dragged him out of the cell and threw him into the pit. The pit was where prisoners were forced to fight for entertainment. Many had died there, torn, part by claws, teeth, or alien weapons. "Fight, human." The commander laughed from the stands. "Show us how strong your kind really is." The gates opened, and a huge beast crawled into the pit. Its body was armored, its mouth filled with sharp teeth. The crowd of alien soldiers shouted and cheered, expecting a quick kill. The human stood still. He did not raise his hands. He did not scream. He simply watched. The beast roared and charged, but at the last second, the human moved just enough. To avoid the strike, the crowd went silent for a moment. He moved again, faster than they expected. The beast lunged, and again he slipped aside. The human was not fighting to win. He was measuring, watching, studying. After several minutes, the guards grew bored. The commander barked an order, and energy shackles pulled the beast back into its cage. The human was thrown to the ground, chained again, and dragged back to his cell. The guards laughed. "See? Even in battle, he is nothing. A coward, a shadow." But deep inside, the human smiled. Not with his lips, but with his eyes. He had seen enough. That night, when the prison fell silent, the human finally spoke. His voice was low, calm, and steady. "Not long now," he whispered to himself. The alien prisoners nearby looked at him in confusion. "Not long for what?" One asked. The human only shook his head. "You will see." And far out in the void, beyond the prison station, something stirred. A massive warship, silent for decades, drifted among the stars. It was old, scarred from past battles, and forgotten by most of the galaxy. But its core still burned with power. Its systems were not dead, only sleeping. And now, for the first time in years, its sensors caught a familiar signal. The ship woke. Lights flickered on across its hull. Weapons hummed with quiet energy. Deep inside its eye core, a voice began to form. It spoke only one word, a name, the same name of the prisoner, sitting in the dark cell. The guards thought the human was helpless. The prisoners thought he was broken. But the stars had begun to change. Soon, the galaxy would learn the truth. The warship was coming. Asterisk. Whispers of the forgotten warship. The prison station floated like a dark scar across the stars. Its walls were thick, its guards merciless, and its captives broken. But in the shadows of the cells, whispers began to rise. Not about escape, not about freedom, about a ship. It started with an old alien prisoner, a veteran from a war long past. His scales were cracked, his body weak, but his eyes still remembered. They say there was once a Terran warship, he whispered to those who would listen. A ship unlike any other. It fought whole fleets by itself. It tore apart cruisers. As if they were nothing. The galaxy feared it. The younger prisoners laughed. Old tales, fairy stories to pass the time. Humans? They are bones and soft skin. They do not build ships of fire. But the old one leaned closer, lowering his voice. The ship had a mind, a living core of steel and flame, and it would answer to only one name, the name of its captain. In the corner of the cell block, the human prisoner sat in silence. He did not speak. He did not even look up. But inside, his heart beat faster. The ship they whispered about, it was no story. It was real. And it was his. The guards mocked the rumors. Warship? Ha! The Terrans were crushed centuries ago. Their fleets burned. Their planets turned to ash. Still, the rumors grew. Every night, new voices joined the whispers. Every day, more eyes turned toward the human in chains. Some began to wonder if he was more than he seemed. Why does he not cry? One prisoner muttered. Why does he not? Fear the guards? Asked another. Why does he sit so still, as if waiting? The human never answered. But at night, when the cell block grew quiet, he would close his eyes and listen not to the guards, not to the prisoners, but to the stars beyond the walls. And far away, the stars were answering. Deep in the void, the forgotten warship stirred. Again, its sensors reached out across the dark. Its weapons warmed like sleeping beasts. Its engines, silent for decades, gave a low hum. The ship had been waiting. Waiting for the signal. Waiting for the name of its captain. And now, the signal had returned. Inside the warship's AI core, lights flickered like eyes opening. Programs came alive. Memory banks whispered of battles long past. And then, with a voice deep as thunder, the ship spoke. Captain detected. Identity confirmed. Its words rippled through the void, awaiting orders. Back in the prison station, alarms suddenly crackled across control screens. Operators frowned, confused. Commander, we are receiving interference. What kind of interference? The commander barked. A signal, old pre-war coding. It shouldn't exist anymore. The commander slammed his clawed hand against the console. Ignore it. Ghost signals. Old wrecks in space. Nothing more. But deep down, even he felt the chill. The signal was not random. It was calling something. That night, the guards decided to amuse themselves with the human again. They dragged him from his cell and shoved him into the central hall, where other prisoners were gathered. Look at him, one guard sneered, lifting the human by his collar. This little thing is what your whispers are about? This is your mighty Terran commander? Pathetic. The guards laughed, throwing him to the ground. The prisoners watched silently. One brave alien prisoner stepped forward, speaking to the guards. Perhaps you should not mock what you do not understand. The guard slammed his weapon against the alien's face, dropping him to the floor. Silence, fool. You spread lies. But then the human raised his head. For the first time, he spoke aloud, his voice steady, calm, and cold. Not lies, memories. The room fell silent. The guards froze, their laughter dying in their throats. The human stood slowly, chains clinking with each movement. His eyes locked on the commander's. "You think I am helpless," he said softly. "But you are wrong. Something is coming. And when it arrives, you will know fear." The guards shoved him back toward his cell, trying to laugh again, but their voices shook. The other prisoners stared at him with wide eyes. What did he mean? What was coming? Far beyond the prison walls, the warship turned toward the station. Its engines roared to life. Its weapons glowed like suns. It had heard the voice of its captain. It was coming home. Asterisk. Chains begin to break. The prison station was never quiet for long. Alarms, boots, and the screams of the beaten echoed through its steel halls. Yet inside the human cell, silence lived. He sat with his back against the cold wall, eyes half closed, as if asleep, but his mind was awake. His thoughts moved like blades, sharp and patient. He knew the warship was moving. He could almost feel it now, calling to him across the stars like a heartbeat in the void. The chains on his wrists were heavy, but they no longer felt like defeat. They were only temporary. The guards began to notice. One leaned close to the bars and spat. "Why do you sit like that, human? Why do you not cry? Why do you not beg?" The human raised his head slowly. His eyes were steady, calm, almost too calm. "Because I know something you don't," he said. The guard snarled. "And what is that?" The human leaned forward, voice low, almost like a whisper. "That your time is running out." The guard laughed nervously, but when he turned to leave, his hands trembled on his weapon. That night, the prisoners gathered in whispers again. They spoke of the strange signal. They spoke of the human's words. Some began to believe. One alien, his skin, pale and scarred, crawled closer to the human's cell. "Tell me," he said quietly, "what are you waiting for?" The human's lips curled in the faintest smile. "For the chains to break." The alien frowned. "How will they break?" The human did not answer. He only looked past the walls, past the stars, toward something only he could feel. Meanwhile, far away, the warship pushed forward. Its engines carved trails of fire through the darkness. Its weapons warmed with each passing second. The AI's voice grew stronger, like a storm rising from silence. "Captain, confirmed. Approach vector locked." The ship's systems reached out, searching for the prison's coordinates. Its sensors pierced the void. Its cannons pulsed with light. The warship was awake, and it was angry. Inside the station, strange things began to happen. Doors that had always stayed locked flickered for a moment. Lights dimmed, then brightened again. Screens flashed with strange codes the guards could not understand. "What is happening?" One officer demanded. "System interference," replied a technician. "Something is probing us. Something old. Something powerful. Shut it out," the officer barked. "We can't," the technician whispered. And in that moment, deep inside the prison walls, the human's shackles clicked once. Just once. The guards did not hear it. But the human did. He smiled. The next day, the guards brought him out again. They wanted to break him. They dragged him into a chamber filled with prisoners chained to the walls. The commander stood above them on a platform, holding a whip made of energy. "You think your stories frighten us?" The commander growled. "You think your little myths of warships mean anything? I will show these fools what happens when hope infects their minds." He raised the whip and struck the human across the back. The sound of crackling energy filled the chamber. The other prisoners flinched, but the human did not scream. He did not cry. He simply straightened his back and stared at the commander. Again, the whip fell. Again, silence. The commander roared in anger. "Why will you not break?" The human's voice was calm, steady, almost cold. "Because I was never yours to break." The commander hesitated, his hand trembling on the whip. For the first time, A shadow of fear crossed his eyes. That night, the station trembled. The warship had entered the system. It moved like a predator, silent and deadly, its cannons glowing faintly in the dark. Inside the prison, alarms blared. Guards rushed through the halls. Unidentified vessel approaching. Massive energy signatures. The commander shouted orders, but his voice was tight with fear. "What ship is it?" One officer cried. "Unknown," came the reply. "Design? Not in records. It looks Terran." The words dropped like a stone in the room. Terran, the name of a dead race. A race that was not supposed to exist anymore. The commander slammed his claws against the console. Impossible. But it was not impossible. It was here. In his cell. The human lifted his head. The lights flickered again, and this time the chains on his wrists clicked louder. One shackle snapped open. Then another. The prisoners around him gasped. You are not helpless," one whispered. The human stood, the last chain falling from his hands. His back was straight, his eyes sharp. "No," he said softly. "I never was." Above the prison, the warship spoke again, its voice echoing like thunder across the system. "Captain identified? Orders?" The human smiled. The chains had begun to break, and the galaxy was about to burn. Asterisk. The warship awakens. The prison shook. At first it was faint, just a vibration through the steel floor. The guards thought it was a power surge. The prisoners thought it was another trick of the station, but the human knew better. He lifted his head and whispered, "It's here." Far above the prison, the warship emerged from the dark. It was massive black armor, scarred by old battles, engines glowing like blue fire, weapons lined across its hull like the teeth of a predator. The galaxy had forgotten ships like this. But now one had returned. The station's scanners screamed warnings. "Unidentified warship detected. Power levels, impossible. It's off the scale. It's locking on to us." The commander's face turned pale. He slammed his fist on the console. "Shields up. Call every gun online. Destroy it." But even as the words left his mouth, the warship moved. Its cannons glowed bright. And then the void lit up. The first blast tore through one of the station's outer towers. Fire bloomed, metal ripped apart, and debris spun into the dark. The shockwave rattled every hallway, throwing guards and prisoners alike against the walls. The station screamed with alarms. "All units to defense stations." The commander roared. "Kill it before it kills us." But deep inside the prison blocks, the prisoners cheered. For the first time, hope filled their voices. "It's real," one shouted. "The Terran warship, it's real." And every eye turned to the human. He stood free of his chains now, his gaze steady. The whispers had become truth. The guards rushed into the block, weapons raised. "Silence, silence, or you die." But the prisoners did not stop. They shouted louder, voices rising with fire. The commander stormed in, furious. He pointed at the human. This is your doing. What signal did you send? What trick is this?" The human only smiled faintly. "No trick. My ship has finally come." The commander struck him across the face, but the human did not fall. He stood firm, his eyes unshaken. "You think you're safe because of some old machine?" the commander hissed. "We'll blast it apart, and then I'll watch you beg." But the human shook his head slowly. "No, you will beg." Outside, the warship tore through another section of the station. Its high core spoke with cold fire. Threat level, insignificant. Objective, rescue captain. Dozens of defense turrets turned to fire at it. Missiles streaked through space. Lasers cut across the void. The warship moved like a predator among prey. It spun, dived, and struck. Every shot it fired shattered an enemy battery. Every missile it launched ripped through the station's armor. The galaxy had thought Terran ships were extinct. Now one was showing them why they had been feared. Inside, the chaos spread. Explosions shook the walls. Lights flickered. Smoke filled the halls. Guards shouted in panic, unsure whether to fight or flee. The prisoners began to rise. Chains rattled as they pulled, twisted, and broke. Some grabbed weapons dropped by fallen guards. For the first time in years, they fought back. And in the middle of it all, the human walked forward, calm in the storm. He picked up a fallen guard's weapon, its metal handle cold in his hand. He did not aim yet. He simply carried it, each step filled with quiet purpose. Prisoners cleared a path for him, their eyes filled with awe. "Who are you?" One whispered. The human's eyes flashed with steel. "I am his captain." The commander saw the tide turning. He snarled and pointed his claw at the human. "Kill him. Kill the human now." Dozens of guards raised their weapons. The prisoners froze. But before they could fire, the station shook again, this time harder. A hole ripped open in the ceiling. Fire and smoke rained down. And from above, a voice thundered through the speakers of the station. "Captain detected. Extraction in progress." The voice of the warship. The guards dropped their weapons in shock. The prisoners fell silent. Even the commander's eyes went wide. The human looked up, and for the first time, he allowed himself a true smile. "It knows my name," he said softly. Then the warship fired again. A beam of pure light slammed into the station's surface, cutting open a corridor straight toward the prison blocks. The walls glowed, melted, and broke apart. Metal screamed. Freedom was coming. The prisoners cheered again, their voices shaking. The halls. The guards scrambled in fear. The commander shouted orders, but no one listened anymore. And the human stood tall in the fire and smoke, ready for what came next. His chains were gone. His warship had awakened. And the galaxy's nightmare had just begun. Asterisk. Fire in the prison halls. The prison was no longer a cage. It was a battlefield. The walls groaned under the warship's strikes, metal twisting and breaking. Smoke and fire filled the corridors. Alarms screamed without end, red lights flashing. Like blood in the dark, the prisoners were no longer silent, beaten shadows. They had become a storm. Chains clattered to the floor as they broke free. Shouts of defiance filled the air, and at the center of it all, the human walked forward, steady and calm. Guards rushed in, weapons raised. "Kill them! Kill the prisoners!" The commander roared. His voice cracked with fury and fear. But the guards' eyes betrayed them. They no longer looked like predators. They looked like prey, cornered and shaking. The first blast came from a prisoner, a thin alien with trembling hands who had stolen a rifle. He fired, striking a guard. The man fell, and the hall erupted. Prisoners surged forward, grabbing weapons, tackling guards, fighting with a fury that had been caged for too long. The human moved through it all like he was born for this moment. A guard lunged at him with a blade. The human sidestepped, grabbed the man's wrist, and twisted. The blade fell into his hand. In a single motion, he struck. The guard crumpled to the ground. Another came with a rifle. The human fired the stolen pistol once, clean and precise. The shot echoed through the hall. The prisoners around him stared. None had moved with such skill, such certainty. One whispered, almost afraid, "He fights like a soldier." The human glanced at him, eyes cold as iron. "I was never a prisoner. I was waiting." Above them, the warship's voice returned, booming through broken speakers. "Captain, path cleared. Extraction corridor ready. Follow beacon." The commander froze where he stood. His eyes widened. "Captain?" The word echoed across the chaos. Every prisoner heard it. Every guard heard it. The human turned his head slowly toward the commander. "Yes," he said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Captain." The commander's face drained of color. The prisoners erupted with new fire. "He's their captain. The warship is his. We can win." Hope turned into rage. Rage turned into strength. They surged forward with a fury the guards could not stop. The commander shouted orders, but his men were already breaking. Some fled. Others dropped their weapons. The human pointed toward the corridor the warship had opened. "This way. Move." Prisoners obeyed. They pushed forward, fighting through fire and smoke. For the first time in their lives, they followed. Not from fear, but from belief. The halls became rivers of battle. Guards tried to form walls of defense, but the prisoners broke them apart. Blades clashed, rifles fired, fists struck. Screams echoed through the smoke. The human moved at the front. Each strike precise, each shot purposeful. He wasted nothing. He did not fight for chaos. He fought for freedom. A young alien stumbled beside him, weapon shaking in his claws. "Why? Why are you helping us? You are not one of us." The human fired down the hall, dropping a guard with perfect aim. Then he turned his eyes to the alien. "Because you are prisoners, and I know what it means to be caged." The warship fired again from above. Another blast tore open a wall, creating a path toward the docking bays. Shards of metal rained down, sparks, lighting the halls like falling stars. The prisoners cheered. They could see escape, but the commander was not done. He dragged himself onto a high platform, eyes blazing with rage. His voice cut through the chaos. "Do you think you can escape?" He roared. "This station will burn before I let you leave. I will bury you all." He slammed his hand on a console. Sirens wailed. Red lights flared. Self-destruct activated. A cold machine voice announced, "Station collapse in 10 minutes." The prisoners froze in horror. The human did not stop moving. He looked up at the commander, his eyes like steel. "Then we leave in 9. The warship's voice filled the air again, calm and steady. "Captain, extraction in progress. Time limit noted." The human raised his weapon. "You heard it. Move." The prisoners roared in answer. Together, they pushed forward harder, fighting for every step. Explosions shook the halls. Fire tore through rooms. The station crumbled around them. The commander's laughter echoed through the smoke. "You'll never make it. You'll all die here." But even as the station burned, the prisoners ran behind the human, their voices growing louder. "Forward. Follow him. Freedom." And as they fought their way down the collapsing corridors, the human's eyes stayed locked ahead, unshaken. The warship had come for him, but now he was bringing everyone else with him. The escape corridor of the station groaned like a dying beast. Every wall shook. Every light flickered. Fire raged through broken halls, choking the air with smoke. The countdown of destruction echoed everywhere. Station collapse in 9 minutes, 8 minutes. The prisoners ran. Some stumbled, some limped, but none stopped. Fear and hope pulled them forward. And in front of them all was the human calm, steady, unstoppable. Guards poured into the corridor ahead, rifles blazing. Bolts of red fire streaked down the hallway. Prisoners screamed as shots struck the walls around them. The human lifted his pistol and returned fire. Each shot was clean, precise. 2 guards fell instantly. "Push forward," he barked. His voice cut through the chaos, strong and certain. "This is the way out." The prisoners obeyed, surging behind him. They no longer saw him as just a man. He was something more. A leader. A symbol. The commander watched the chaos unfold from the control tower, his claws gripping the railing so tightly they bled. "This cannot be real," he hissed. "One human cannot destroy everything. Yet every screen showed the truth. His station breaking, his soldiers fleeing, his prisoners rising. And above it all the warship hammering the station with relentless fire. The commander slammed his fist on the console. Seal every bulkhead. Stop them. Kill him if you must. The escape corridor was long and narrow, half destroyed by the warship's blasts. Flames licked the walls, and broken wires sparked like angry snakes. The prisoners ran through it, coughing in the smoke, stumbling on debris. Some carried the wounded. Some dragged broken chains still clinging to their wrists. And always, the humans stayed at the front. A blast shook the corridor, throwing several prisoners to the ground. The human turned, grabbed one by the arm, and hauled him up. "Keep moving," he said. His voice was firm, but not cruel. It was the voice of someone who had carried others before. The warship's voice filled the corridor, echoing through hidden speakers. "Captain, extraction path open. Docking bay secured. 6 minutes remain." The prisoners gasped. A docking bay meant ships, escape, freedom, but the human only nodded once. "Hold steady," he told them. "We're not safe yet." Because he knew what they didn't, the commander would never allow escape so easily. He was right. The floor shook violently. A massive blast door began to fall at the end of the corridor, sealing their path. The prisoners screamed. "We'll be trapped. It's closing." The human broke into a run. His legs pounded the floor. The blast door was halfway down. He pushed harder, faster, his body straining at the last moment. He slid beneath it, rolled, and slammed his hand on the emergency override panel. Sparks flew. The mechanism froze. The blast door stopped just inches from the floor. "Go!" he shouted. The prisoners poured through the gap, one by one, dozens of them, until the corridor behind them was nearly empty. The last of the weak crawled through as the human held the panel with one hand, sparks biting his skin. His face was calm, though the fire burned his flesh. Only when all had passed did he release it. The door slammed shut behind him. The prisoners stared at him in awe. "You? You saved us." One whispered. The human wiped the soot from his face. "No, the ship saved us. I'm just getting you to it." But in their eyes, he was no longer just a man. He was their captain too. Then came the ambush. From hidden alcoves, guards stormed out, surrounding them. Rifles clicked. Blades gleamed. The commander's voice roared from overhead speakers. "You think you've won? You think you'll escape? You are nothing but animals in chains. And you," his voice dropped into a hiss, "you are just one man with the ghost of a ship." The guards raised their weapons. The human stood firm, weapon in hand. Smoke swirled around him, fire casting shadows across his face. He spoke quietly, but his voice carried. "I am not alone." And then the walls shook again, harder this time. Blast ripped open the side of the corridor. Metal screamed, fire burst outward, and from the smoke, heavy drones dropped in machines black as night, marked with the warship's crest. They landed with a thunderous crash, weapons glowing. The warship's voice followed. "Captain, assistance deployed." The guards froze. Fear spread across their faces, and then the drones opened fire. The corridor turned into hell. Guards fell in seconds, their weapons useless against the machines. Prisoners scrambled behind the drones, shielded by their fire. The human fought alongside them, every shot precise, every strike deadly. The commander screamed through the speakers, "No, stop them, stop him." But nothing could stop them now. The prisoners surged forward, following the drones, following the human, driving toward the docking bay. And through the smoke, through the fire, the human's eyes burned with something. More than survival. It was vengeance. The countdown roared louder. Station collapse in 4 minutes. The human raised his weapon, pointing toward the docking bay ahead. Run, freedom is waiting. And with the drones clearing the way, they charged toward the final gate. The warship had come for him, but now it was carrying them all. Asterisk. The docking bay inferno. The docking bay doors groaned as they opened, flooding the corridor with blinding light. For a heartbeat, the prisoners froze. They had never seen freedom so close. Beyond the bay, they could glimpse stars cold, endless, waiting. But between them and that sky stood the commander, clad in heavy armor, weapon in each hand. His eyes burned with hatred. Behind him, guards held their ground in one final wall of fire dot, and above it all, the voice of the station's machine echoed. Station. Collapse in 3 minutes? The human stepped forward, calm and steady. The commander's laughter shook the bay. You think you've won? He snarled. This is my station, my world. You are nothing. One ship cannot save you. He raised his blade, pointing it at the human. You, human, kneel before me, and I will spare the rest. The prisoners went silent, waiting for the human's reply. The man did not kneel. He did not move. He simply lifted his weapon, his voice low and steady. You should have killed me when you had the chance. The commander roared. The final battle began. Guards opened fire. Bolts of energy streaked across the bay, slamming into walls and crates. Prisoners screamed, diving for cover. The human surged forward. He fired in quick, precise bursts. Guards dropped one by one. The drones from the warship crashed through the broken walls, weapons blazing, tearing apart enemy lines. Sparks filled the air like falling stars. And still the commander came on, swinging his massive blade with fury. The human met him in the center of the bay. Steel clashed. Sparks flew. Each strike shook the air. The commander was strong, fueled by rage and pride. But the human was calm, each movement sharp, controlled, unstoppable. You are nothing. The commander bellowed, striking hard. I am human, the man replied, blocking the blow. His voice was cold, unshaken. That is enough. He twisted, drove his blade into the commander's side, and fired his pistol point blank. The commander staggered back, armor smoking above them. The warship roared. Captain, I am here. The roof of the docking bay exploded inward as the warship's guns tore it open. Fire and smoke rained down as the massive black vessel descended, its engines screaming. For the prisoners, it was like seeing a god arrive. The warship hovered, its cannons glowing, its shadow filling the bay. Its voice shook the air. Board now, time remaining. 2 minutes. The prisoners ran. They rushed up ramps, climbed into landing craft, dragged the wounded with them. Drones shielded them, firing at any guard who dared to resist. The humans stood in the middle of the chaos, weapon raised, covering the retreat. The commander, bleeding but still alive, staggered to his feet. His face was twisted with hate. You won't leave. He screamed. If I die, you die with me. He slammed his hand on a device strapped to his chest. The bay floor shook violently. Explosions ripped through fuel lines. Fire surged upward in roaring pillars. The prisoners screamed as flames spread. Station collapse in 1 minute. The human moved fast. He charged the commander, slamming into him before he could trigger another blast. They crashed to the ground, blades and fists striking. The commander clawed at him, spitting blood. You cannot win. You will die here. The human pressed the muzzle of his pistol against the alien's chest. His voice was quiet. No, you will. He fired. The commander's body went still. The human staggered to his feet, smoke burning his lungs. Fire surrounded him, swallowing the docking bay. He looked at the prisoners fleeing into the warship's crafts. He looked at the stars beyond the bay doors, And then he heard the voice of the warship again. "Captain, come home." The human's lips curved in the faintest smile. With the last of his strength, he sprinted across the burning floor, diving into the ramp of the nearest craft. Prisoners pulled him aboard as the bay collapsed behind them. The crafts shot upward, carrying hundreds to safety. The warship's hangars swallowed them, shields snapping shut, and then, with a thunderous roar, the warship pulled free of the station. Behind them, the prison broke apart, fire devouring its walls. A final explosion consumed it, lighting the void with a storm of flame. The prisoners watched through the warship's windows, stunned and silent. Their prison was gone. They were free. The humans stood among them, bloodied, burned, but unbowed. One of the freed captives whispered, "You saved us." Another said, "No, he led us." And then, one by one, they began to chant. Soft at first, then louder, stronger, filling the great halls of the warship. "Captain, Captain, Captain." The warship's voice joined them, deep and steady. "Captain." The human raised his head, his eyes fixed on the endless stars. The galaxy had thought him helpless. Now it would remember his name. Asterisk.